Hello, folks. Hello, folks. Hello, and welcome to the special Halloween edition of Causey's Classics Live, brought to you by Black Cat Comics and Rockin' Milpitas, your one-stop shop for all things superhero. Shop online at black-cat-comics.com. We're here to talk some classic horror comics of eras gone by. Going to talk a little history of horror comics, some analysis of some cool horror comics, and we're going to sell some cool horror comics. So go to black-cat-comics.com in another window, click on shop, click on Causey's Classics, and get ready, because when I say make it live, you're going to see a book magically appear, one of the books that we talk about. If you want to purchase that book, click on that book, go ahead and go through the whole process of purchasing that book, and don't wait around if you really want it, because if you put it in your cart and Bob puts it in his cart and Bob checks out, Bob's going to get the book. So, like I say, we're going to talk about some books. If you're interested in purchasing one, go to the site and get ready. If you're not in a place to purchase one, well, then just sit back and relax and get a little creeped out as we talk about the horror history of comics, which is tons of fun. I think that covers the basics. So let's go ahead and get ready. So horror comics really start in the 1950s. Unfortunately, tonight I don't have any cool EC Tales from the Crypt comics. Those are particularly rare and particularly expensive, even for comic book guys. But horror comics really explode in what we call the Dark Age, the era in between the Golden Age and the Silver Age. Runs, late 40s, 1950s. Mostly explodes from a company called EC Comics that you may or may not know about. Really, that's a whole other thing that you can study. There's books, there's movies. EC Comics is a huge thing. But what I'm getting at is the backlash to EC Comics and all of the wonderful and horrible things that they produced created the Comics Code that some of us know and love, and some of us don't love so much. And the Comics Code put very, very harsh restrictions on the production of all comic content. And so that brought the horror comics to a cold, dead stop. And then just after that, you see the resurgence of superheroes and whatnot. So that gives us a little history. I bring that up because I want to show you what horror comics were like in the 1960s. This is a Dracula comic from Dell Comics. This is actually kind of cool, kind of rare, but it's really wacky. I mean, it's Dracula as a superhero, because during the 1960s, you couldn't have vampires, you couldn't have ghosts, you couldn't have zombies, you couldn't have blood, you couldn't have murder, you couldn't have all the things that made horror comics great in the 50s. So when they tried, they, made Dracula a superhero and a force for good. And I mean, come on, superhero comics in the 60s were great, but apparently horror comics in the 60s, not so great. So in the 1970s, the Comics Code changes quite dramatically. And once again, we're allowed to have vampires and ghosts and zombies and monsters and blood and gore and all these things. And so in 1970s, we see a resurgence of horror comics. And many, many people feel that that's where the Bronze Age begins. Is with the changing of the rules of the Comics Code and the release and the return of horror comics, which is what brings us to this guy. Going to start off tonight with Dracula Lives magazine #2, because, well, it says Dracula on it real big, and unlike this guy, sorry, Del, this is what people know and expect when they're talking Dracula. So you may be familiar with the wide line of Marvel magazines. I'm particularly fond of the Planet of the Apes one. But like I say, I wanted to start tonight with Dracula, because what's more Halloween, what's more horror, what's more classic than Dracula? Why should you buy this magazine? Well, aside from this awesome cover, Marvel magazines of the time are extremely cool. You get some great artists. You get all the classic Silver Age folks working, like Jolton Joe Sinnott. Let me just give you a little taste of what makes these things fun. A little splash of color, little photo op, just some classic Bronze Age 70s horror stuff with a little bit of that 1950s flavor. But I say, just here's Stan Lee and Fred Kaida. There you go. Super fun. Anywho, this magazine, it's not a first issue. This guy's not near mint. It's just something Dracula, something fun, something cool to read, something Halloweeny. This guy's just $10. It'll get you going on your cool Dracula Lives and Marvel magazine collection. Like I say, just something fun, something classic, something very horror and Halloween to get our Halloween episode going this evening. So why don't we go ahead and make it live with Dracula Lives #2, the classic Marvel magazine, 1970s little piece of magic there. So as I said earlier, if you're interested in acquiring some of these books, go to black-cat-comics.com, click on shop, click on Causey's Classics. Whenever I say make it live, it will magically appear and you can take it home to your haunted house. Super, super fun.
And we're live.
So that brings us, as I say, to the Bronze Age. Black Cat Comics is your one-stop shop for all things superheroes. So we're sticking to Marvel. We're sticking to the DC stuff. We're kind of staying in that Bronze Age. I personally think Bronze Age horror comics are some of the best until you get into the more modern stuff with Walking Dead and that sort of thing. But, they brought horror back and gave it a little splash of monster, gave it a little splash of superhero. Here's Astonishing Tales, #21. This is the beginning of It, the Living Colossus. Super fun. It also has a classic Steve Ditko horror reprint in the back of this. This is another $10 guy, another Bronze Age classic. It's not super key. This isn't something that's gonna, make you rich, but it's a really, really fun read. And it's the first It, the Living Colossus part of the series. Just wanted to show this because this is a little bit of, again, some of the classic stuff that the kind of things the big two were cranking out. It, the Living Colossus, as it says right there on the cover, kind of, gives you that Godzilla sort of vibe, the King Kong sort of vibe, the Mummy sort of vibe. Fun stuff. Just big monsters crushing stuff. And Astonishing Tales is actually quite a few. This is a really nice copy. Has quite a few first appearances and things. Tony Isabella and Dick Ayers. So if you don't know Dick Ayers, I refer to him rather graciously as the other Kirby, because when Kirby wasn't doing a book, they gave it to Dick Ayers. Dick Ayers did a lot of inking for Kirby. I'm just a big fan of Dick Ayers, and if you're a pretty hardcore old school Marvel fan, you're a big fan of Dick Ayers too. And Tony Isabella is a name that needs no introduction. His name's on all kinds of things of this era and a lot later after this. Just want to show you a little of that awesome Dick Ayers art, some of that classic 1970s style. It, the Living Colossus. New and sensational from mind-shattering Marvel. So, like I say, just another little Bronze Age teaser, another example of some of the fun things that Marvel was doing. Let's go ahead and make it live. That's Astonishing Tales, #21. Cool 20 center. I love 20 centers. Fun stuff. Add that little gem, and it will suck you in, and it's going to make you want some of the other ones. And moving on into, boy, this guy has really exploded of late. And as a few things we're going to talk about, there's a lot going on with a lot of these Bronze Age horror comics and horror characters in the Disney Plus stuff, in the next round of Marvel movies. And that brings me to Morbius, the Living Vampire. Love me some Morbius. This is Adventure into Fear, #20. Or if you look it up in the Overstreet Price Guide, it's just Fear, #20. This is not the first appearance of Morbius the Living Vampire, but it is his first full issue and the first issue of what comes to be known as his title. And boy, if you're a Spidey fan, you really need this book. If you're a Spidey fan, you already know and love Morbius the Living Vampire. If you don't know much about Morbius, as I say, there's a lot of talk of Morbius for some of the, probably in the Sony movies, probably coming out of the Venom verse, because they're the ones that own all the Spidey villains. So there's a lot of talk about this guy. Of course, he's had his own series recently, which was really cool. He pops up periodically from time to time. But again, a really great example of Bronze Age horror comics, the kind of stuff Marvel was doing where they, mix in a little bit of horror, a little bit of superhero, a little bit of what Marvel does best, and then a little bit of, as I say, in the 70s, they were allowed to start doing stuff like this again, and they hadn't ever been able to have vampire really big on the cover, and now they could, so they did. This is a really, really fun title. As I say, lots of folks love Morbius. Lots of folks love these 20-cent Bronze Age comics, all these short-run Marvel 70s books. Good fun. So let's make it live. Adventure into Fear, number 20. Another cool 20-center. As I say, this guy's in pretty good shape, too. Probably at least a 7. Well worth the $25 we've got it up for. Again, get that home to your haunted house. Switching gears for just a second, let's take it over to the other guys. This is House of Secrets number 88 from good old DC Comics. Another Bronze Age gem, as you can tell by that 15 center. 15 centers come just at the end of the Silver Age and the beginning of the Bronze Age. Love that classic Neil Adams horror cover. Nobody does mainstream horror covers like Neil Adams. Just kicking around having a couple of Batman books to show you tonight because Batman is sort of that horror superhero, but I found this little gem instead. So DC Comics was doing a little more straightforward kind of thing that you would expect from horror comics. They sort of picked up where EC had left off, maybe just a little, not quite so murderous and horrific, but definitely creepy crawly. And House of Secrets is one of the most classic horror comics you're going to find, not just because of those awesome covers that send chills down your spine, but because of the great stories in the interiors. They give you the, I don't remember now what their names were, but the little crypt keeper guys. Help me out, Francie. Doesn't that guy show up later in the Vertigo stuff?
Oh, Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel. Giving you little framing sequences for your horror stories, giving you the little crypt keeper intros and exits. Some beautiful, beautiful art. One thing you always have to give to horror comics is the detail of the art. And they really brought that back again, particularly from on the DC side with books like House of Secrets. Because horror needs more detail, needs more mood, needs more art. Superhero comics can be fast and punchy and explosions and bright colors. But horror comics needs those facial expressions. You need the fear. The Mourning Ghost. Now that is a Bronze Age horror comic right there. Love me some House of Secrets. Like I say, DC, this is really, the seed that grew into Vertigo Comics that is now your Black Label Comics. As I said at the top, DC really embraced the horror aspect, and they didn't mix in their superheroes, and they didn't have necessarily happy endings. They wanted to give you the kind of stuff that was genuinely scary, and they did a great job of it. And from these kind of titles, this is where you get Swamp Thing, and again, all of that into the 80s slowly becomes Vertigo Comics, which inspires all the great books that you know today, like Walking Dead and my favorite Afterlife with Archie and all those kind of things. So can't say enough about House of Secrets. If you don't know much about them, this is a great issue to start. It's a great little sample, as they say, of what DC was doing in the 70s and in the Bronze Age. Let's go ahead and make it live. House of Secrets, number 88. This guy's in really nice shape, too. Probably at least an 8. I honestly don't like to fuss too much about the grading. I like to make it more about reading them and the content, why you should have this in your collection. But hey, a nice book's a nice book, right? White pages, clean staples. Look how bright white that is. It's a nice copy of a book. So, House of Secrets, that cool Neil Adams cover. And again, I'm staying kind of in the Bronze Age because in the absence of some awesome 50s classics, I think the Bronze Age has some of the most authentic sort of horror stuff. Question?
More of a comment. The Adventure into Fear number 20 is already sold.
Oh, wow. There you go. So good job. Somebody's taken this to their haunted house. It's a great score, as all these books are. All right, and now, boy, now we're getting into the gems, and got a couple other sort of fun little history of comic anecdotes to share. So this guy is Ghost Rider #2. And this is an especially awesome comic. You probably recognize that cover. You've probably seen it many times. You probably have seen this listed as one of the keys, and you're like, Cause, it's not #1. What makes that book so awesome? Well, this is the first appearance of Damien Hellstrom, commonly known as the Son of Satan, Marvel's newest TV star. I don't know if that's Apple Plus or what it is. I lose track of where all the shows are these days. But Hellstrom is their new TV star. He's been big for a long time. I've been a big fan of him going back to his days in the Defenders. Everybody knows Marvel Spotlight #12, but they don't know that this book predates Marvel Spotlight #12, feeds into Marvel Spotlight #12. This is a book that every horror fan needs. So, on a side note, Ghost Rider is really, really fun and interesting because, as I say, in the 1970s, the Comics Code changed, and so the publishers were allowed to start creating dark and heavier stuff. Well, just so happens that there was a movie called The Exorcist that everybody was going to see, and it was taking the country by storm. And there happened to be a whack job named Evel Knievel, my main man, Evel Knievel, jumping canyons and all kinds of fun stuff on his little bicycle. So Stanley had the wild idea, well, you know what we need? We need Evel Knievel and The Exorcist. How can we have Evel Knievel and The Exorcist in a comic? Well, you take Evel Knievel, you put him through hell and make him the Ghost Rider. It's really kind of one of my favorite little history of comic stories. And there's lots of stories like that. Comics is always trying to take the popular thing and make a comic out of it. But who'd have thunk that you could take Evel Knievel and The Exorcist and make it a popular comic? And of course, the Ghost Rider's been popular ever since. He was huge in the 90s. He's been coming back recently in the Avengers and different things. You saw him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all kinds of stuff. Everybody loves Ghost Rider. Most of us have seen the movie. Some of us don't admit to it. I thought it was cool to see him in a movie. I like Ghost Rider. He's a fairly unique character in the big scheme of things. So, Ghost Rider #2, second issue of his own series, first appearance of Damien Hellstrom, very, very key book. We've got this guy listed for $75, which is a steal price. You go to Midtown, they don't have one, but they list it for a lot more than that. And she's in really nice shape, too. Let me hold that cover up real good and close. Of course, you can see the scan on the website. Again, I don't like to fuss too much about grade, but let's face it, a nice book's a nice book. And boy, that's a good one. I want to say, yep, Gary Friedrich, drawn by Jim Mooney. Love me some Gary Friedrich. A little like Tony Isabella, Gary Friedrich might be a name that isn't overly familiar to you, but it should be because his name's on all kinds of great books of the 70s and 80s. Big fan of Gary Friedrich. Big fan of, again, these cool Bronze Age Marvel books. I mean, look at that. Super cool, super great stuff. So, first Damien Hellstrom, Ghost Rider #2. What's the date on this cool 20 center? I'm going to say 1973. Yep, October 73. So let's go ahead and make it live.
And we're live.
Ghost Rider, is he alive or dead? Again, classic cover, classic comic, and that's in really, really great shape. So before I get to the big gem of the night, before I get to our last main feature, I want to throw it out there that this is interactive, able to take questions, comments, queries, concerns, interested in what some of your favorite horror titles are, some of the things that you're either reading now or some of the classic series that you like. Like I say, if you got questions about the history of horror comics, lay them on me.
Why don't you talk about our own horror comic that's coming out?
Oh, there you go. Before I get to the big gem of the night, why don't I talk about Black Cat Chronicles? The Greyfriars Cemetery is a comic book coming at you from Black Cat Publishing, right here from Black Cat Comics in Rockin' Milpitas. You can check it out on our Kickstarter. That runs for about 24 hours, I guess. Wraps up midnight on Halloween. We are producing our own horror comic. as I say, called Black Cat Chronicles, the Greyfriars Cemetery, true horror stories. We've got some sample pages up for you. You can participate in the Kickstarter and prepay for the comic and a digital comic and all kinds of other fun stuff. Or you'll be able to purchase a pre-order one from our website and from the publishing page as well. Very excited about that. We're really excited to get that out. Appreciate everybody that has supported the Kickstarter. Appreciate all the moral and financial support we've gotten for everybody, because doing our own horror comics is especially cool. So that's good fun. So, okay, let's get to the big gem, the one you've been waiting for. You probably saw this one on the advertisement. You've been waiting to get to this all night. This guy. It's Marvel Spotlight #2. The first appearance and origin of the Werewolf by Night. One of the hottest books there is right now, Halloween or otherwise. Been a gem that we've had sitting around and waiting to do something special, and the Halloween edition of this show seems like the right time to sell the first appearance of Werewolf by Night. This is a hard book to find. It is a pricey book. It gets pricier all the time. Like a lot of Bronze Age books, particularly Bronze Age horror books, particularly second issues, because second issues always have lower print runs than like half the print run of first issues. This is a pretty rare book, and it's pretty hard to find, and it's super, super popular. So this is a great time to go to black-cat-comics.com, click on shop, click on Causey's Classics. Get ready for us to make this baby live. I have a feeling somebody's waiting to pick this up. It's going to go fast. First appearance of Werewolf by Night. Super cool. Mike Plug is another name that you should know very well. Another name of a guy, doesn't do a whole lot of superhero stuff, but he does a lot of great books that people love, and that's why they love him. Really cool, classic, little mix of superhero and horror art. And again, this book's in pretty great shape. It's supersized. It's 25 cents at a time when cover price was 15. So this is one of those 52-page giant books. It's got a pretty nice spine, good cover, good color, good pages. We're letting it go for $150. If I had any brains, I would just take it home myself and keep it, because, like I say, this book's hard to find and really doesn't get much more key or much more popular than the first appearance of Werewolf by Night. I can spoil a 50-year-old book. Besides, all this happens on the cover anyway. Like I say, can't really say enough about this. It's a really nice copy, and it's a really fun book, particularly at Halloween time. This is the kind of book that you buy and you kind of don't flip. This is the sort of thing that you want to hang on to. Like I say, if I had any brains, I'd be hanging on to it myself. And like a lot of great things, it's got a cool backup feature reprint. Another, I think that's Steve Ditko. Oh, it's Bill Everett, another one of my all-time favorites. Creator of the Submariner, Bill Everett. Fun stuff. Marvel Spotlight #2, first appearance of the Werewolf by Night. I can say this guy's a real gem. Fun book. So let's go ahead and make it live. You guys can cage fight for this one. Fun stuff. And to continue on with that sort of history of comics, as I say, from the Bronze Age, you get that explosion of horror books. And it was from there, at least in my little thinking and in my little corner of the world, I believe, that's when you started to see the publishers notice that comics had an older readership. And you start to see comics written a little differently. You start to see comics sort of progress. The superhero stuff progresses. And then as we get into the 80s, again, you see another explosion from Vertigo, where we get Swamp Thing and all kinds of great horror books from those guys. And that rolls into the black and white explosion, which leads to Walking Dead, which gives us all the great zombie books that we have today, like Marvel Zombies and all those sorts of things. And as I said at the top, as much as that starts with EC Comics in the 1950s, and you all need to do more homework about EC Comics, everybody needs an original EC comic in their collection. But I don't have the time or the comics to go all into that tonight. But it starts with EC, and those guys just dement children everywhere. And so Congress gets all down on comics, and then we all know those stories. But that's where we get the Comics Code. Comics Code changes in the 70s. And from there, from the Comics Code change in the 70s, like I say, we get all kinds of eras of great comics to this very day. Thought I had my Afterlife with Archie back here, but I guess I did. So that is kind of tonight's special Halloween edition of Causey's Classics Live. We've talked about some really, really fun books like Dracula Lives, like House of Secrets number 88 with that awesome Neil Adams cover. And, of course, the big gun, first appearance of the Werewolf by Night. I hope you've had a little bit of fun. I hope I was able to infotain you for a little bit. This is the first part of our Black Cat Comics annual Spooktacular. Tune back in at 7 o'clock here on YouTube and here on Facebook. And we're going to share some scary stories. Francie and I are going to read some spooky tales. There's a Zoom link. If you want to get in on it, you can read an original spooky story. Please keep it little ghoul appropriate. And join us at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a lot of fun. Because here at Black Cat Comics, we do Halloween and the Halloween Comic Fest every year, especially in scary years like 2020. So before I wrap it up, last chance, questions, comments, queries, concerns.
Oh, it looks like Werewolf by Night just sold.
Oh, somebody grabbed it. I knew it wouldn't last long. Whoever that is, you're a smart person. This is a great book, and you're really going to enjoy that. Folks, I also recommend somebody grabbing this first Damon Hellstrom. And they'll be in that section. If you're mulling it over, check back, like I say, go to black-cat-comics.com. Click shop, click on Causey's Classics, and take a look at some of the books that we've been talking about. Horror comics are a lot of fun, and there's all kinds of great ones from all the different eras, just like everything in comics. So like I say, hope you've had fun. Hope I've infotained you for this time. I'm Mark Causey from Black Cat Comics. Like I say, tune back in at 7 o'clock. We'll read some scary stories. Thanks for watching.